The history of the prawn species eludes us, and that's mostly because it has not been the forefront of people's minds. The species come from a distant planet that is stated to contain itself a total of 7 moons, and what would be known as a super-Earth, that being a rocky planet many times the size of the mass of Earth. Taking into account their relative adaptability to Earth's climate and atmosphere, we can speculate that their homeworld is quite similar to that of ours. The exact location of the planet compared to that of Earth is currently unknown, and it is a mystery just how widespread this species might be in the cosmos, and whether the world that the prawn Christopher refers to as his original home is just one in a long line of colonized systems in their crustacean empire. We know that their home is located within a globular cluster, and it is suggested by the prawn's own star charts of multiple galaxies that they might not even reside in the Milky Way galaxy, but another one entirely. For whatever reasons, this group of prawns set out on a voyage into the stars. I think the voyage had some connection to colonization, as hinted to by the large number of prawns aboard the mothership, at the time weighing in around 1 million prawns. It's possible that they had done this many times before, and this was simply just another colonization expedition. Or it could be the first step in becoming a multi-planetary species. Either way, the prawns would run into misfortune in our particular region of space in the galaxy. Little worlds existed around us containing the conditions matching that of their homeworld. The prawns endeavoured to complete their mission though, too far to turn back now. With resources running low and morale lower, they were given a glimmer of hope when they discovered a diamond in the rough. The prawns first arrived aboard their mothership at Earth with no warning to the native inhabitants living there in the year 1982. For the first 3 months since their arrival, for unknown reasons, the mothership remained locked. Nothing could get in and nothing came out. After this period, the human population of Johannesburg, the city that the craft hung over, decided to finally try and open the craft by forcibly cutting their way through the ship's hull. When they were successful, what they find is not a glorious, powerful group of aliens, but instead a group of lost, confused, and malnourished creatures that have seemingly been trapped in their own vessel. Quickly, the regional government set up a community for the prawns to live in on the surface. However, as they tried to expand beyond their bounds, and after their advanced weaponry was discovered, the South African government acted to quickly secure a perimeter around the community, that eventually turned into a gate, and then became a wall. After not long at all, the entirety of the prawns' 1 million member strong group was living in a modern day ghetto. This ghetto would become known as District 9. Conditions in District 9 became increasingly harsh and desperate over the years, as these prawns had no leadership. They simply lived the best they could and strived only to maintain and obtain more food and entertainment. Conspiracies popped up around the prawns and their origins and purpose for being on Earth, by the world of humanity who largely grew to dislike them. A lot of illegal trade of alien technologies occurred, deals that would see the prawns ripped off, with humans cheating them with their addiction for cat food. The conditions there got so bad that a ring of interspecies prostitution rose. As a military presence increased, so saw the government create an organisational structure for dealing with the prawns in the most civil way possible for the time, although most of these regulations were far from civil. Prawns were treated very unfairly and downright disgracefully most of the time, and especially by the large xenophobic militant members within the district. They were stripped of any kind of technology, which was stolen away and taken to be studied by humans. In addition, they were restricted from ever leaving the ghettos and not allowed to breed. Obviously not many prawns followed these rules, which quickly resulted in frequent and violent confrontations between humans and prawns, especially when the termination of unborn, infant, or juvenile prawns occurred. The department of the government responsible for these laws and enforcing them was known as Multinational United Alien Affairs Department. MNU itself, being one of the largest weapons manufacturers in the world, had really only one objective in their mind, which was to pretty much steal away as much of the prawn technology and study the prawn's biology to be able to utilize the powerful prawn weaponry. After 20 years of living in the ghettos, MNU announces a new location known as District 10, where they plan to relocate now the 1.8 million prawns to, after they are successfully evicted from District 9. Well, you might think that a brand new camp must be nice and new with 1,000 times better conditions than the current one they are residing in. However, I would speculate that MNU were planning a mass genocide of the prawns once there, or if not, putting them in conditions so poor that it's very unlikely that they would survive. It's not a far reach when you see the attitudes towards the creatures by the humans of the time, and even the general public, who knew very little about them in the first place. And considering human history for a moment, when the Jewish people of Germany were moved from their ghettos in the dark of night to new ones, they turned out to be concentration camps and work camps, and eventually led to the slaughter of millions of Jewish people in the most horrific ways. It is simply human history repeating itself, beginning anew and having learnt nothing from our past. Since the fateful day that the prawns were moved onto their earthbound prison, a single prawn had begun to stand above the rest. Slowly and quietly it devised a plan. He was more intelligent, he could creatively think, and is probably the next of the alpha prawns. Over 20 years he worked to locate a small command vessel that had fallen from the mothership when they arrived, and enough fuel to make a trip back to the prawn homeworld to get help so that they could return to Earth and save the rest of his kind there. And then after that, well, who knows? But before he could even enact his plan though, MNU begun their relocation efforts. Quickly they arrived to this particular prawn's residence looking to evict him. The prawn known as Christopher Johnson, having stashed his lab setup in his home and the fuel for the escape ship within this lab, needed to keep it out of MNU knowledge. The prawn's fuel source of the ship was biologically driven and a derivative of their own genetic material, it seems. It contains strange and wonderful properties that we do not fully understand as of yet. One human named Wickus, an Aliens Affairs MNU employee, came across the fuel fluid during their raid of Christopher's home and was accidentally sprayed by it, beginning some sort of biological takeover of his body that he was as of yet unaware of. Eventually it would begin to consume his biology, transforming him into a prawn himself. Much before that occurred though, Christopher is luckily given one more day, 24 hours in fact, to hatch his plan. This is largely due to Wickus's deteriorating state, which he initially assumes is just a simple stomach bug. They pull their forces out and choose to begin the evictions the next day. Sadly though, the fuel is taken by MNU for further study, and so too Christopher's hope of escaping Earth with his young child. In the preceding events, Wickus begins to mutate. He is taken to hospital, he is then captured by MNU, who hope to harvest his transmorphic DNA in order to create a way to operate the prawn's bio-locked technology. However, before they can achieve this, Wickus escapes and takes refuge in the dingy District 9. Unfortunately for him, his life is all but over, as the MNU create a smear story that he had engaged in questionable acts with the prawns in order for these mutations to begin, pretty much turning his entire family, friends, and colleagues against him. Wickus decides to seek out Christopher, discovering a majority of Christopher's plans for escaping Earth. The two, human and prawn, decided that they needed to work together for their mutual benefit, to achieve their goals of stealing back the prawn's fuel source, so that Christopher could leave the planet, and that so Wickus could be cured of his affliction by his new prawny friend. Before that though, they must storm an MNU stronghold, though they need to procure sufficient weaponry. Wickus does so by visiting and stealing them from a Nigerian arms dealer operating within the district that had a massive collection of prawn weaponry. Wickus and Christopher break into MNU and make it all the way to the lab before Christopher sees just what humanity is capable of doing to things that they do not respect. As Wickus procures the fuel, he turns to witness Christopher's dead stare at the mangled experiments in front of him, mutilated corpses of his kin. And it's at this moment that Wickus gets his first sense of just how the prawns have been treated, how they have suffered and will continue to suffer here on Earth. After they fight hard to escape the lab, Christopher informs Wickus that curing him will now take longer than he had originally planned, as he now wishes to leave immediately to get help from his homeworld, meaning that it will be a whole 3 years before he can return to help Wickus. In a state of blind rage, Wickus attacks Christopher for this statement and proceeds to attempt to reach the mothership himself for whatever reason. Maybe he thought he could find the cure for himself, or that he would be able to uncover it somewhere in the mothership. However, as Wickus attempts to lift off towards the ship, the command ship is shot down by MNU military, and Christopher is taken hostage by the MNU forces. And shortly after, Wickus is pulled from the crash ship by MNU. Just as all hope seemed lost, the convoy that they were entrapped in is attacked by the Nigerian gang members, who take Wickus away for his theft of their weaponry and their desire to consume him to gain the abilities of prawn technology, which is bullshit, by the way. After this, Christopher's child that hid away in the command ship during the commotion remotely activates the mothership, and as the ship becomes active, it also initiates the boot up of nearby technologies, such as the exomech suit, ideally located within the gang members' dealership. The suit, currently lacking a user, acts in self-defense, gunning down all hostile organisms, holding on Wickus, detecting his prawn genetic material. For Wickus, the suit opened and allowed him to take control. Wickus at first wants to run again for the hills to get to the mothership and find a way to save himself. However, as he does, he hears the mercenaries preparing to execute Christopher, as he was no longer any use to them. Something changed in Wickus at this moment, and for the first time possibly in his entire life, he found the best of humanity within himself. He promptly returned and saved Christopher by doing battle with the MNU mercenaries, protecting his friend long enough for him to get to the command ship. Before he leaves Christopher makes a promise to Wickus that he will return in 3 years to help him return his body to normal. After Christopher makes it to his child, the two enter their ship, and it is levitated by the mothership's tractor beam up into its hull. Wickus is beaten. The suit is broken from his battle with his enemies, and he crawls out, wounded and damaged, onto the ground, finally ready to accept his fate, as a lone adversary comes closer to finish him off. However, in this moment, the local prawns, witnessing what Wickus had done for their kin, the sacrifice that he had made, decide it's time to stand up for something and to come together. They attack and kill the mercenary known as Venter and save Wickus, before returning to the slums to wait for a would-be rescue by Christopher. As they all look to the sky, Wickus, prawns and humans alike, they witness after almost 3 whole decades the mothership take flight and leave Earth bound for a distant star. The prawns shortly after are moved to District 10, a much more guarded, controlled, and concentrated camp, where conditions seem to be worse than they were before. What will come of them is unknown. However, the time preceding the District 10 move has seen their population grow from 1.8 million to 2.5 million, with little signs of slowing. The question now remains, will Christopher return? And when he does, which I believe he will do, obviously he will come as a saviour for his people, and likely Wickus too. But seeing the evil that humanity is capable of, is it possible that Christopher and his prawn brethren from the home world may exact a level of vengeance on their prior captors? We simply do not know at this point, and we await with eager eyes pointed at the sky. And as for Wickus, even though his body has transformed into something non-human, his mind and his soul were arguably the best of all humanity at the time. No one else had the courage to stand up for a prawn, let alone potentially sacrificing their life for the future of an alien stranger. Where he is now is unknown. Not long after the mothership departed, he succumbs fully to the mutations and completely transforms into a prawn. It appears that he's been using what little time and freedom he has to construct metal flowers, sneaking out of the district to plant them on his wife's doorstep from time to time, a reminder that a part of him remains and is holding on to hope of his friend's eventual return. Before I go, I wanted to let you know about the ACHERON Colonial Marketplace, the one-stop shop for all Project ACHERON merch. Here you can pick up shirts, hoodies, mugs, phone cases and more. So if you want to support the channel and look good doing it, pick up some ACHERON merch. But what other videos would you like to see? If you have any ideas or have any questions, please leave them in the comments or contact me through Twitter or on the Project ACHERON Discord. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and share this video. And if you want to really help see this channel thrive and grow, as well as gain a bunch of awesome rewards for yourself, consider becoming a patron, such as Christopher Dasinger and Ambrosia, leaders of the Project ACHERON Hive. I hope to see you all here again very soon, but until then, this is Project ACHERON signing off.